Hey guys, it's Horror Free for All, better known as Goosebumps Completionist, and welcome back to Goosejunkies, episode 45. Tonight's episode is going to be not so hair raising one, but more eyebrow raising one. How about that? Because we're going to be looking at some episodes that need to be dug from the annals of the subgenre. Yes, we're looking at undercovered, or better yet, underrepresented kids' horror episodes that we feel should be more hated on. Yes, we're going to be having a more negative type of discussion this podcast, but stay tuned because a lot of these episodes you may remember or may not remember, but I can promise you one thing, you'll never unsee it if you decide to watch them. I'm joined tonight with my co-hosts, as always, Ultimate Goosebumps Man and the Horrorlander. How are you guys doing tonight?
Yo, people and patrons of the night. I got nothing flashy to say for this one because I think the content itself speaks for it, man. I mean, we're going to be digging up some skeletons in the closet. These are things that maybe you knew existed, maybe you didn't know exist. And after you watch them, you're going to wish that we never put you on. But it is what it is, man. Listen, we talked about the scariest. Now these are the scariest, but in how bad they are. So, looking forward to roasting these.
Yep. You know, what's a good campfire without a good roast, right? How you doing tonight, Micah?
I'm doing great. I'm just, I'm getting ready to finally be done with school in 2 weeks. Very much looking forward to that. And, excited to have this little reprieve to just talk some kids' horror. It's been a while, so I'm excited for it. And especially to roast some bad episodes, because that's always a fun time.
Yeah, and we on Goosejunkies, we've done 45 episodes, right? We have covered some bad episodes on this podcast, right? Across all shows. But I do feel that a lot of the ones we've covered so far, for the most part, I think people generally know about, right? There's a lot of infamous episodes out there. For those of you watching that, come across this podcast, you obviously know about Goosebumps and the reputation the 90s show has, partly because of big YouTubers like JonTron. I'm not trying to accuse anybody specifically when I call out JonTron, but you might be familiar with his 3-part series with My Harry's Adventure, Don't Go to Sleep, and Ghost Beach, where he infamously roasted those episodes, and those for years have been kind of shat on and been tarnished. There's also other episodes that deep cut fans know about, like Teacher's Pet, Strained Peas, Barking Ghost, and a few others that kind of make the list. But there's also, across the other shows we've talked about, like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Everybody knows about the Hungry Hounds episode. Everybody knows about Gruesome Gourmets, even though I don't think we've covered that yet. People know about Virtual Pets, stuff like that. And then in Haunting Hour, I think Poof Day Fromage might be like the sole representative for bad episodes on that show, or like the poster child of them. Everybody and their mom knows that episode. But when we're looking at across the board, like Creeped Out, Nightmare Room included in the bunch, there are some episodes, even from these well-covered shows that we've talked about on the podcast, that just don't get talked about in the discussion of the worst. And I really do feel that all the ones we're going to bring up today in our official 5 list, and plus in our honorable mentions in some aspects, are worthy of that discussion. So before we go any further, to everyone, just know, full transparency, we are fans of these shows. We are not haters. Just know that. We come from a place of sincerity. We care. But at the same time, it's also fun when you're a fan of something to laugh at the shortcomings of what you're a fan of. Because if you can't laugh at it or laugh with it, and you just get mad at it, then it's just going to upset you, right? So to take this all with a grain of salt and know that we're coming from a place of laughter, okay? But I guess we got to start. We got to start lighting the fire here and starting the roast, because I think we're all hungry here. So whoever wants to start with their honorable mention first, I'll leave the floor open. Let's get the ball rolling.
I guess I can go.
Yeah, okay.
I'll talk about mine because I think that for those of you out there, Are You Afraid of the Dark fans, hello. All right, you may not be fans of us after this episode because there's quite a few maybe mentions you might get, but in the honorable mention, I gotta give it to a Haunting Hour episode that I have always found to be, since watching it, one of the most insulting kids' horror stories ever written. And there's a big reason for it that I'll get into. But to start off, we're going to be talking about The Tale of the Manaha, which I believe is in season 5. Now, The Tale of the Manaha is basically an overnight camp story. You have a group of extremely goofy caricature kids, and you have this camp counselor who is this very militaristic, angry, always shouting kind of guy who has to get in everybody's face and go, "You're a loser!" That's what he does every single scene in this whole episode. Just keep yelling. And they basically are getting ready to do some camping, and the main character comes in. And this main character, compared to everybody else who's kind of just goofy and feels out of place, he pretty much is like a camping enthusiast. He has this book, uh, which is like the third, like it's like How to Survive in the Wild, and it's like 13, 15 chapters or whatever that he got from like Barnes and Noble or something, or whatever bookstore was out at that time. And then basically he keeps getting insulted for it because the author's name is Oscar Butts, which is a whole scene in the episode which gets memed. But he basically is thinking that he can take on the wild. He's ready for it. He can even become the new camp counselor eventually in the future. But very quickly, he's having a miserable time. He's getting made fun of. He's getting mistreated. He's not doing well in this camping trip. And eventually, they end up stumbling upon this cave. And the cave may have some Native American roots that start coming to life, particularly a very powerful and evil shaman, which says a forbidden message, basically foreshadowing that there are these kind of mystical Bigfoot kind of monsters that reside within the forest called the Manaha. And the Manaha are going to come forth, start wreaking havoc, maybe eating the kids, eating the humans. So immediately the kid gets threatened and he tries to do some "you gotta believe me" stuff, trying to convince everybody that there's actually, this evil shaman and there are these Bigfoot out there. Nobody believes them, and eventually things start to pick up. And maybe some people go missing, and then you realize that, yeah, there is actually something going on, and we're all being targeted. Now, concept wise, it's, I would say, a decent concept. I think the concept of this episode has some potential. The problem comes in the execution, people. This is like one of the worst executed episodes in Are You Afraid of the Dark, because the acting in this episode, while it is funny to laugh at, it is dog shit. All right, you have all the kids. They are the most stereotypical caricature kids you'll see in your life. There is this one chubby kid who's supposed to be your stereotypical fat boy who's stealing in all the junk food. He literally opens up the episode, and his introduction is he has a glass jar filled with pasta with light garlic sauce and tomato sauce in it that he's just scarfing down. And immediately, when he shows it to the camp counselor smacks it out of his hand like a 90s bully. And then immediately he looks like he's about to cry. Then you cut to moments later in the woods when he's eating like chocolate bars and, pulling garlic bread out of his back pocket. Like, it's just the most like stereotypical stuff you can imagine. There is a wimp kid that is just wimpy and doesn't want to be a part of anything and is scared of like mosquito bites and stuff. And then the main character, holy cow, he's so annoying. The entire episode, anytime there's any tension or any big scene that's coming up, he'll go, Chapter 5, Oscar Butts discusses what fear actually is. Chapter 16, Oscar Butts explains how you can use acorns as toilet paper. He just keeps saying these stupid things quoted from the book the entire episode, no matter how serious or life-threatening the situation is. And, obviously the main camp counselor, he's funny, but all he does is just yell and get in people's faces. He basically is like a rip-off version of, that one dude from the movie where he's like, "Let me see your war face." He tries to be that, but he's not as charming as that guy was. So that's just his character. And the main villain. This is where the problem comes in the episode. And I'm going to give spoilers. So anybody who doesn't want to hear spoilers, I can throw up my peace sign so that way I'm speaking and you can skip. But to be honest, I don't think you guys are going to be too much invested into this for me not to spoil. But I have to because it's how bad it is. So this episode obviously is talking about Native Americans, right? Native American culture. And a big part of this episode is, well, okay, how are these kids going to deal with the ancient shaman and his, mythical creatures that he can summon forth? Well, they do it by insulting Native American culture to the highest level. And the reason is because these dorky little white kids somehow are able to outsmart this ancient shaman in not smart ways, not Home Alone Macaulay Culkin ways. No, in the most stupid, obvious ways possible, which is basically that when these mystical Bigfoot are coming out and about to attack the kids, the main character says that chapter 13, Oscar Butts says that fear is within the mind. So these Manaha are actually not real. And by sheer coincidence of the gods, it turns out to be true, and the Bigfoot just disappear right here and there. He then takes these mystical artifacts and statues that belong to this Native American shaman and treat it like Party City ornaments. He basically treats them as if they don't have any value, and coincidentally, they don't have any value. And then when he meets the main villain, he has his friends cosplay as Manaha to trick this ancient, all powerful shaman who created these creatures, who knows that they're fake, and for some reason buys in that a prepubescent Caucasian boy is somehow able to materialize and manifest these Native American creatures at will, even though he's supposed to be the master of the Native American arts. And then you find out that the kids who are supposed to be impersonating Manaha were actually wearing green tarps with a couple of leaves taped on them. Okay, that's it. This episode is insulting. This episode is absolutely stupid. It makes no sense. It should not work in any stretch of the imagination. And it just goes to straight cringe city. So yeah, that's my honorable mention.
I'm glad that you brought up Manaha because I think the only person I've ever seen like showcase Manaha in like a worst Are You Afraid of the Dark episode discussion was Walter Benaziac, in his famous video, which is probably one of my favorite videos on YouTube for Are You Afraid of the Dark, just because his reactions are priceless, and you got like the infamous reaction of him like especially in his Goosebumps video where he roasts the Return of the Mummy episode. And he's like, ah! He's just a funny guy. But yeah, Manaha, the book the kid carries around, MacGuffin, kids, freaking stereotype city. I mean, the fat kid, I honestly think was in the wrong show. He should have been in Heavyweights, the movie. He would have fit right in with those campers. But part of me thinks that maybe that's what they were going for with Manaha, was like, mid 90s cheese, stuff like that was coming out. Maybe, I don't know if Heavyweights came out before the episode. I didn't look, but I want to be shocked if it did, and maybe they took inspiration from that. But, aside from like a few like charming moments in like the first few minutes of the episode, once that fades, everything is a sinking slope from there. And he's not wrong, people. It's about as offensive as you can imagine from that description. So yeah, great pick. Michael, you have anything you want to add about Manaha?
I'm not really. I don't really have a lot of time to watch the honorable mention episodes, so I haven't really got much experience with it. But I'm probably gonna spare myself.
Yeah. Get to it when you get to it, man. It's not a must watch unless you're morbidly curious to see its reputation, which I don't think it has necessarily a good one. But most people that I know that have seen Manaha don't like it. So, but my favorite moment from the episode is always "How to Survive in the Wilderness" by Oscar Butts. The kids the camp cows are screaming it. That's hilarious.
There's also a scene. I don't know if we'll get that. I'll find the clip. I'll screen record. But it's a clip of basically when he's doing like a "You Gotta Believe Me" thing, and it's the most Looney Tunes ass scene I've ever seen in the entire Are You Afraid of the Dark show, where he's like, "The Manaha, they're coming to eat us. We gotta get out of here!" And he screams like a little girl, and he immediately goes behind him and slams into the sheriff, and he just like backflips onto the floor. It's like the most Looney Tunes ass scene I ever seen in kids horror, but it did make me laugh, so that got minor points.
It's one of those things where I think the cast was having more fun than the audience.
Yeah, I'm sure it was fun on set.
I'm pretty sure it was fun for them, but aside from the main kid being like the voice of Arthur, there's not a lot of like things I can appreciate about the performances here, other than the guy went on to play Arthur. So, yeah, great pick. I guess up next, Micah, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna rip off the Band-Aid here because this is gonna be a hot take, and this isn't technically an underrated bad episode in terms of most people's eyes. Most people love this episode For me, it's an underrated bad episode because I've always hated this one, and it is Attack of the Mutant. I have never liked this episode, and while there are some like interesting things that could have worked, and like it's based on a solid book. I think that just the execution in a lot of ways was just very lackluster and just kind of cringy. The first part is abysmal. It is slow, boring, nothing happens. The characters are so dumb and just I don't know how to describe it. Like Skipper's parents are probably some of the worst parents in Goosebumps. They're given fun, campy performances, but like the characterizations and just this, like, the super nerdy dad who's just ultra against comic books, and then like this really quiet, submissive mom. It's like they just feel like straight out of a cartoon. They don't feel like real people or real parents. I think that, the set design, especially in Skipper's house, is like, it looks like a dollhouse from the inside of it. And like, while this is all production design stuff, I think that, the actor who plays Skipper is solid. I think he does a much better job as Seth in Click, but he's still solid for what he has to work with. But it's just such a dull first part. Nothing happens. It's just him talking about the Masked Mutant, getting that new Masked Mutant comic where it has his story showing up in it. And of course, you also meet Libby, who is probably the worst actress in the whole episode. The girl who plays Libby is just awful. She has terrible line deliveries. And you go into part 2, which is much more fun. I'll give part 2 the flowers because it is more fun. Scott Wickware is great as the Masked Mutant. He has that fun, campy performance that is necessary for the Masked Mutant as a character. He's the one character who should be fun and campy. And then you also got Adam West, who I think is wasted in this episode. It's fun to see him in there, but like he does nothing in the plot. He's tied up by the mutant. Skipper frees him. Masked Mutant attacks him once, and then he just leaves. Like the Galloping Gazelle, this so-called big hero in the comics, Masked Mutant's arch nemesis, it literally runs away in like a few seconds after being on screen. And like I'm sure it's probably because Adam West's budget ran out or something, but like it's still like it feels like a wasted potential of a character. And then the ending of the episode, like it's a fun twist and it's an iconic twist, but I still think it's kind of cringy just with the whole stretching Elastic Boy bit. I don't know. It's iconic, but in my opinion, it doesn't really work as well as it should. And kind of ends the episode on a bit of a cringy and goofy note. And like, again, yeah, it's just not an episode that I've ever really found interesting. There's fun moments in it, but just to me, it just feels like an episode that was just kind of a waste of time and probably did not need to be a 2-parter in the slightest bit. So I know it's a hot take, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, Attack of the Mutant, I don't necessarily hate the episode, and I've read the TV book, and it kind of baffles me, like how they thought it was a good idea to make part 1 basically just exposition for part 2, which naturally makes sense enough, but to drag it out as long as they did. If this episode, or let's say the 90s show came out today and they had the streaming format, ain't no way that would have been a 42-minute episode. They would have found a way to make it in 30, which quite frankly is all it needed. I would say if we're dividing up parts, like part 1s and part 2s, and we're separating them, I would say Attack of the Mutant Part 1 might be one of the most boring Goosebumps episodes ever made. Like, just by itself. I could totally see why people, when they talk about Attack of the Mutant, they're mainly talking about stuff that happens in Part 2. Nobody's talking about Part 1 or stuff that happens in there, unlike most 2-parters from the show. People are like, oh yeah, that's the one where Scott Wickware comes out and Adam West is the Galloping Gazelle. Yeah, that's not until Part 2, man. Like, what do you remember what happens in Part 1? Nobody can tell you. It's just because it's one of those that I guess we're trying to make a 2-parter because they got Adam West to do it, but like that's really the only reason why it's a 2-parter, because he wanted that 2-parter money. He's like, oh, it's gonna be here, it's gonna be on primetime TV. Oh, I'm gonna get a nice paycheck out of this kind of deal back in the day. Which sometimes, if not all the times, the 2-parters were put on primetime, believe it or not. So it is what it is. But I don't necessarily hate the episode overall, but I kind of see your perspective in that it is a slog. It's not entertaining for the most part until like the final 10 minutes. So, yeah, Shiv, do you have anything you want to add about Mutant?
No, I mean I don't. I've never loved the mutant episode, but I never hated it either. I just think it's mid. Again, it's just like more boring episodes, more forgettable. The back half stuff, and like most importantly, the very back half when Adam West and Scott Whitwer is in full effect. Yeah, that stuff is iconic. That stuff is fun. But yeah, for the people who love it, I don't see it either. Yeah, I don't understand why people love that two-parter. So I'm in understanding of that. That it is a little like if we're going off of stuff that needs to be a little bit more hated, yeah, in that regard, it's a little bit too highly praised. So I can also kind of see that angle.
I mean, to kind of, keep the echoing, mentioning other YouTubers, Pushing Up Roses, once upon a time, used to cover a lot of Goosebumps. She did say that Attack of the Mutant was the worst Goosebumps episode, according to her. So, and I've actually seen people rank Attack of the Mutant in the bottom three. So, I don't think
Excellent.
it's quite that of a hot take, Micah, to say you hate this to a degree. But it's one of those things where I think the iconic moments do make it relevant in some aspects. Like you can't deny how iconic Scott Witwer and Adam West is in the episode. But does that necessarily make this like a great episode? No. So yeah, I see your point. So yeah, great picks so far, guys. For me, I have a deep cut one. All right. Not a lot of people probably have seen this episode unless you're a completionist and you watch these shows all the way through. I picked an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode from the revival era. And it's not the one that most people probably think. When people think revival, Are You Afraid of the Dark, they think about, of course, gruesome gourmets, virtual pets, maybe zombie dice. I know that one's kind of a dunked on one, or The Hunted, which I think could have possibly been mentioned for this as an honorable mention, or maybe even put on the list. But I decided against that one, and I went with this because, for the life of me, this season 7 episode, ever since I first watched it, made me think, what the fuck were they smoking when they came up with this episode? And it's a shame that this stars a relatively well-known kids horror actor from the golden era, Laura Vandervoort. You might recognize her from stuff like the Haunted House game episode or another episode that's actually going to be on our list. I don't want to spoil it yet, but it is Goosebumps. And then she was in the, I guess, cult favorite Disney Channel original movie, Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. This episode is easily the worst thing she was ever in, and it's The Tale of the Laser Maze. Now, for those that have never seen this episode, just listen to me and hear if this is something that you actually want to watch. Okay, conceptually, it's not bad, kind of. It's about these two twin girls who are in high school and they do karate. And in their after school, I guess, curriculum they got going on at their school where they do karate lessons and such, they're approached by a grown man. Okay, so this is Stranger Danger 101. If you're two girls who are in high school, you never get approached by a guy that looks like Austin Powers coming up to you, which, quite frankly, that's what they decided to go with the villain of this episode, but we'll get to that shortly. This Elvis Presley, Austin Powers looking impersonator comes up to these girls and invites them to a tournament to test to see which one is better than the other. Because the whole theme that Are You Afraid of the Dark love to try to like force into every single one of its episodes is that there's already some introductory conflict usually with some characters, and in this one it's a sibling rivalry, basically like a pissing contest, which one is better than the other, who's the better twin, right? And they arrive at this laser tag arena where there's nobody around and it's just this guy. Again, Stranger Danger 101. Your alarm bell should be going off like the sirens and the epilepsy warnings that need to be put on the screen when you're watching this episode. But because if you watch this, just fair warned, there are strobe light galore. So if you're epileptic, do not watch this episode or watch it with some restraint. It's revealed that basically they're there to duke it out via laser tag to see who's finally the best. And the winner shall reap the benefits while the loser we find out, ends up getting abducted. And you might be like, okay, well, this is kind of going a little too far. You got a grown ass man abducting a girl. What are they doing, right? The whole point of the story, now this is a spoiler, is that this guy, aka Austin Powers Light, is an alien robot from a different planet who has come to Earth to have humans fight in laser tag arenas, and then I think the losers, they decide to upgrade to make them better, right? And see if robots are better than humans. So not only are they going out there with this wild idea, but they're also trying to rip off Terminator in the worst way possible. And of course, because this is Are You Afraid of the Dark, and because this is a very campy episode, this guy, this villain, over the top performed. He gets pretty cringy moments, and once we see a malfunctioned Laura Vanderfort robot come to life with horrible, horrible ADR and acting, um, these two human siblings have to put aside their rivalry and realize that they're both equals and they need each other to take this villain down. And when I say that this has to be one of the cringiest villain defeats I have ever seen from Are You Afraid of the Dark, I mean it. It is bona fide Power Rangers Turbo level bad. Okay? And that's all I need to say to you. And you just need to watch it for yourself. But holy man, I have no words. I honestly really wanted to put this episode on the list, but I can understand to a degree why people think this is like a so bad it's entertaining kind of thing, because the main villain of the story is absolutely ridiculous. There's nothing about him whatsoever that's intimidating, other than that he's a grown man coming after teenage girls. But that's the icky part about it. Other than that, this guy is a goofball, and he goes laser maze when he's trying to get them to go play the laser tag game. It is absolute cringe. The acting across the board, maybe minus the other twin that's not played by Laura Vandervoort, is horrible. I don't know what Laura Vandervoort was on when she was trying to impersonate a robot, but that shit was awful. Um, and like, while it's kind of like, very, I don't know. You know how the Y2K was with technology and how futuristic everything was trying to be with the technology, techno shit that they had going on. None of that was cool. It all came off like dated things, I guess, nowadays to me. None of it's aged well, other than some, I guess, unintentional humor to be had at the expense of the performances. I hate this thing deeply. I think it's easily top five worst Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, and it's one that nobody ever talks about, which is perplexing to me. But here we are with shit like virtual pests existing and stuff like gruesome gourmets. I think Laser Maze is definitely up there in discussion from the revival era as one of the worst episodes.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the most like what the fuck go gadget episode. This is like so random from its conception, and the whole cringe is like when you're watching the episode. There's so many moments like if you go to like Dave and Buster's, or you go to like some arcade place, and you just like hop on a random machine and you just start like playing the game. It's like that type of like just random stuff that's happening. Like that climax scene when, first of all, this guy reminds me of that dude from Alvin and the Chipmunks and Scary Movie 2, like the dude with the glasses, that picture from looking at the camera. He just got that type of persona and personality. Anytime I can't take him seriously. And the whole climax scene when he starts participating in the laser tag game, and there's that horrible arcade like music playing, and there's like flashing strobe scenes, and he's like turning every corner. He's got like stupid goggles on. He's got this ridiculous outfit and getup. It is so dumb. And let's just say that karate plays a part somehow in how this guy gets defeated, and not in the way you're thinking. Whatever way you're thinking about me saying karate, no, it's not that way. So yeah, this is a ridiculous episode, and the fact that somebody went to pen and paper, came up with this concept, and the director is like, "All right, this is how we're going to use the budget and execute this." Holy cow, people! It's a war crime. It's a war crime in itself.
Yeah, it was one of the last episodes of the original, well, I guess the revival run, which, when you look back on it, one of the final episodes of real Are You Afraid of the Dark? For discounting the new revival that just came out recently. It just blows my mind, like how far did they fall from reality in the revival era with some of these ideas. But hey, you know, I do get like the willingness to experiment and try to do something different, which is, I guess, the appeal to the laser maze concept. I don't write off the concept itself necessarily with like having somebody like, I guess, do like a kids version of Death Race where you bring these competitive kids a la like Hunger Games into an arena, or maybe there's a lot of stakes where you do or die and have to perform. That could be a compelling story. The setup isn't necessarily the worst thing ever, but it's just a guy dressed up like Austin Powers trying to make these characters duke it out to see who the loser is to upgrade them to robots. That is just so stupid. Like, and none of that, even if the episode tried to make that make sense, because their race loves to go planet to planet and gather all these competitors because they're addicted to laser tag performances and shit like that. None of that makes any sort of logical sense. Why the characters would be willing to do this in the first place, and after hearing the information, right, their first instinct, instead of like being like working together, at first there's some resentment for them being in the situation. Like, I don't think they really understand like the situation they put themselves in, and the whole story could have been prevented if they just had mace and sprayed the guy in the face and walked away. But here we are. Maybe that's a cautionary tale for your brain cells, is to carry mace when some dude like Austin Powers comes up to you and asks you to come with him to a vacant building, just you and maybe your sister. I don't know. That's just really weird. I just don't vibe with it. I just something about it. It just hasn't aged well at all. None of it's aged well. So yeah, Laser Maze. Like I said, Manaha, Laser Maze. I think genuinely probably could have made this list personally, but and maybe if we're looking at Attack the Mutant Part One specifically, but they didn't make our top five because our top five we wanted to be balanced and fair. We realized very quick we could have been slighted against one show, so we wanted to have as much coverage as possible, and we decided to pick at least four shows to cover. So we have some Nightmare Room, some Haunting Hour, some Are You Afraid of the Dark. You know, we've already talked about Are You Afraid of the Dark pretty considerably, but we got some more. And then we have some Goosebumps on here. So, really, the first one, and I think we're going to start here because this is probably the most unknown episode across the board from all the shows, because it's from the Nightmare Room show. The Nightmare Room show was on Kids WB in the early 2000s. It lasted one season. It had very poor ratings, and a lot of the viewers had a lot of criticisms about it. justly put, because while there were some good adaptations of books in the mix and some really cool original stories they made for some episodes, there were a few episodes that a lot of fans just were left scratching their heads with and not impressed by whatsoever. And I think Kids WB was kind of disappointed with how it performed, so they pulled the plug very quick. But there is one monstrosity in this show, absolute dumpster fire, that nobody ever talks about when we bring up the worst kids horror episodes ever made. Because from what I've heard, and I've never actually read the book, but I've heard the book is really good. This is an adaptation of a Nightmare Room book that has a good reputation. So how bad do you have to be to fumble this? Well, the episode is called The Howler. And I know you guys freshly just watched this, so I actually want to hear you guys talk about it first, because I think this will be fun. So whoever wants to talk about The Howler, you can pick it up. Tell us what it's about and what's your thoughts on it.
Guess I can talk about it. So for the Howler, basically it's about these three kids. I guess they're like high schoolers. They essentially are in like a little trio, and they like to hang out and stuff. And the main character ends up having a little bit of communication with their teacher, who is like a science teacher and is played by Robert Englund, which is really cool. The fact that Robert Englund's in this episode, highly underutilized, because the guy plays freaking Freddy Krueger. You would expect him to be the main villain. He's not, but he's just in the background. And he has this contraption, which has a really cool nostalgic design, and I wish it was a merchandise item or a collector's item, called the Howler, right? The episode's name. It's this box that essentially is an intricate way to basically communicate and commune with the supernatural, with the paranormal, with ghosts. So the main character wants to basically take this box, use it, and reach out to Ghost. And his two friends are very hesitant on doing it. The main girl in the group, she doesn't believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in the paranormal. So, of course, she's like, I don't know why you're wasting your time with this thing. And the other boy in the group, he's kind of a little bit scared. Like, he tries to act like he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he's a little bit wimpish. But eventually they go to this place called the Pit, right? It's this empty warehouse place where kids hang out, but it's a little infrequent. And it's like a hangout spot for them. So they take the howler box there and they start basically winding it up. They start twisting the dials, and out comes this basically Danny Phantom type of portal, which opens up to Ghost. But it is nowhere near as cool as Danny Phantom, people. All right, this thing opens up, and they see these moving images that kind of move like the sign from one side of the TV screen to the other. It's sort of wonky, it looks kind of goofy. And then you see these three teenage boy band looking kids who just pop up. Initially their faces and then their bodies almost look like holograms inside this machine. So they realize that they have now gotten into contact with ghosts. Except one problem. The energy starts shooting out of the howler box, and then you end up getting some body swapping because these ghosts are apparently belonging to some delinquent kids who had used the howler box before and ended up getting trapped inside of it. And now they don't want to be stuck in the ghost world because it's a total drag, and now they want to get back to real life. But they have to do it one person at a time. And coincidentally, there's three ghosts, and now there's three kids. So it perfectly lines up because, of course, it has to for the basically body swapping thing to take place. So the main guy ends up getting into the girl's body because this is that Scooby Doo movie where you just have to have men inside of women's bodies. I don't know why. It's just a thing. And it happens. And then they have to find out how to basically stop this and defeat the Howler Box. Oh my God. This episode has Power Rangers type of dialogue and Power Rangers type of effects. I mean, if you told me that Zordon was going to pop out of the Howler Box, I would have believed it because it's straight up Zordon effects. I mean, it is so shitty looking. It is so unserious. When you look at their faces literally move around like Zordon too, with the same type of quality. And I'm like, these are supposed to be like scary ghosts. And then when you see the ghost bodies, I'm like, dude, like, are these like boy band members? Like, they're all dressed up in leather, they got slick back hair, and they're like, dude, this is sick, man. And then when they get into the girl's body, the girl, I'm sorry, sorry to the girl actress in this episode, but she has to like deepen her voice and start acting like a hip dude. I don't know why. It reminds me of that Power Rangers Jungle Fury episode where Lily got like it turned into like evil Lily or whatever, and she started acting like a tough biker chick. This chick starts acting like a brat and talking back to people, and she goes up to Robert England, like the science teacher, and starts like insulting him, and he's like taken aback. He's like, "I didn't know you could speak like this," and it just gets really strange. And before that, before they actually get into the ghost thing, they have like alphabet cereal that they're eating, and the ghosts are talking to them through the alphabet cereal, and they're just like one bowl says do it, the other bowl says do it, the other bowl says do it. I'm like, dude, this is so cringe. And then when you get to the body swapping effects, it looks like everyone's getting tasered. Kids are getting possessed. And then eventually, the way they solve it, right, is like they just have the most simple explanation on how to solve it, which is by sheer brute force, and that's supposed to defeat this thing. And then you get an ending, which lets you know that no more cringe body swapping is actually going to happen, and the story was all for nothing. So this is just a cringe fest. The dialogue is cringe, the plot's cringe, and it's just really poorly executed with a really low budget. And I don't know what it is, but when you have a group of characters that don't have any chemistry and don't have any dynamics, it's hard to act like they're friends. I don't believe for a second that any of these three kids would be friends. You cannot buy into it. You cannot get immersed. They don't feel like friends at all, and they just like hang out at each other's cribs whenever they want to, and they don't have any dynamics, no character building, no setup. It's just really just random. So yeah, that's my thoughts about the Howler. It's a shitty ass episode.
Yeah. I remember when I first watched The Howler, it was a few years ago. I never got around to watching it when I was younger because I don't think I had, if it was on tape, I don't think I had the tape it was on. And I I remember watching it and I was like, holy, like the acting, the not only is the acting terrible, but like you said, the chemistry, it honestly felt like they went through, like, remember those early 2000s teen mags where they had the actor portfolios and they would go over like their favorite like flavor of soup and random crap like that. It seems like the casting director, when it picked up a random magazine from a grocery store, saw these three actors and they're like, "Oh, the chick from So Weird. Oh, this guy, he was in some commercials. Oh, this guy, he's random. Let's throw him all these three characters together because why not? They're available." And then they don't screen test because quite frankly, aside from a few episodes in Nightmare Room, I don't think they screen tested any of the actors, to be honest, like to see if they actually work together. This is one of the clear examples of that. Um, but this is like almost next level bad ADR, bad voice acting, bad effects, and the scariest part about, I guess, this episode, right, is that it's almost like a weird Let's Get Invisible remake almost when you think about it, but the effects of this box are so bad that I don't care what you say about Goosebumps and like in the 90s show. I think they had better things to work with than the CGI that you see on screen here. It is absolutely horrendous. I don't think it's like the worst edited episode of Nightmare Room, nor do I think it's necessarily a bad idea. From, like I said, the book, from what I heard, is a good book, but it really baffles me how the book can have a good reputation, but this episode just butchered it at every given turn. It almost makes me wonder whoever was behind the show or the producers if they actually read the source material. I've heard a lot of people complain that historically about Nightmare Room show is that a lot of fans felt like they really didn't actually read the books. Or maybe the two big ones that people actually like are like Camp Nowhere and Don't Forget Me. That's about it. So like it does kind of stick out that the show maybe didn't do their homework the best. And also, the budget, even for like early 2000 standards, it actually looks more low budget than Goosebumps did, to be honest. So yeah, it's a piece of shit. I don't know how else to put it. If you haven't seen this episode before, or any Nightmare Room for that matter, I think personally this is easily the worst episode from that show. And there's a couple of ones that I think people, I guess if you're in the know about, like Fear Games being a hot mess, trying to combine three books. Yes, there was a 3-book trilogy in Nightmare Room. Trying to combine 3 books into one 22-minute episode is a horrible idea. And a couple other stories that just felt like kind of out there, but yeah, this is an all timer for me. It's like when I think about worst kids horror episodes, The Howler always comes to mind, and it's never talked about. Hopefully, this brings more awareness to that.
Yeah, this is definitely a rough episode to watch. Like, it's one of those episodes where you watch it and you just completely forget it after it's over. Because like I watched this episode like an hour ago and I've already forgotten half of it. Like, I don't know. There's just something about it that's just like, again, it's just very poorly done overall. The effects look terrible. The only scene I remember, other than just seeing like the shock of seeing Robert Englund in this of all people, because he's like my favorite horror actor of all time. But just like the main scene I remember is when they first discover that the girl's soul is trapped in the box, and the girl being possessed by one of the ghosts is trying to convince the other two that like this is a lie or whatever. And it's like the acting is so bad from the girl in that scene. And it's like it's hilarious, but also just painful to watch it. And just like, I don't know, again, it was just boring, forgettable. Effects look terrible. It just, I don't know, it's just not one of those episodes that makes sense, especially like, it's one of those, it's like the second episode I've seen out of Nightmare Room. The other one I've seen is Four Eyes, because I think we also did Four Eyes on this channel at some point.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like, I've been off to a rough start with Nightmare Room so far, and I've heard most of Nightmare Room kind of is a bad show overall, so yeah, I'll be interested to see if there's any ones that are actually worth checking out, but this definitely was not one of them.
The lack of chemistry just really kills this episode. Like, it's so apparent because, like, even when they do the body swapping, because this is a common trope for any body swapping story, an episode or movie, right? They have to figure out, like, okay, how do we know that this character has been body swapped? So you'll have dialogue, you'll have clips, you'll have all these things. The only thing that happens in this whole episode is, like, the dude is like, when did you start saying sweet? And then, like, after that, when they're walking down the hallway, she's literally acting out of character, and all they do is just keep turning around and looking at her like, and that's it. They don't say anything else. They just keep looking at her the whole episode. And I'm like, yeah, you guys did not spend any time, offset. You didn't have any like, banter with each other in some audition tapes or anything. No, you just got fresh on set, and that's how you're interacting. So it's clear.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad that everybody kind of feels the same about the Howler. This is one of those episodes that we're recording that it would be kind of weird if we didn't agree. But yeah, the Howler, I think we give our hard stamp of approval. That is a horrible episode that needs to be studied by kids horror scholars out there. Now, to move past the Howler, right? I think we should finish off the R.L. Steins here. For the meantime, at least until we get to the last one, which isn't technically R.L. Stein, but we'll get there when we get there. This next one comes from Goosebumps. And now Goosebumps, it has like basically the golden three people know about, like the Jontron, and then you have Strained Peas and Teacher's Pet. Like those five are always brought up as terrible episodes. Whether you agree if they're all correct on that, I guess resentment or not. There's one episode that I think that is commonly left out of the discussion, and I think part of it is because it's a season 4 two-parter, and I think part of it is that it's one of the more obscure episodes from the show. When you talk about Goosebumps with the general fandom or people that grew up with the '90s show, I often see that people don't even realize this was made into an episode. So I just think this is one of the things where if enough people knew about it, I think it would be hated more. And that is Deep Trouble in parentheses 2, because if you don't know anything about Deep Trouble's episode here, it is not based on Deep Trouble 1's book, and it's also not necessarily based on Deep Trouble 2's book either, even though it has a lot more in common with Deep Trouble 2's book. It's basically like a weird fusion hybrid of Deep Trouble 1, Deep Trouble 2, plus a ripoff of The Island of Dr. Moreau. This episode is, by and large, if you're a big, massive fan of the original Deep Trouble book or Deep Trouble 2's book, a slap in the face to fans of Billy Deep, who's the main character of both of those stories, because in this two-part episode, Billy Deep, I don't think is actually the main character. I think it's Sheena Deep, who's played by Laura Vandervoort. This is her second appearance on this list. Like I said, I think Laser Maze is probably her worst performance, but this is probably her worst episode overall, I guess, because I don't know, maybe because of its relevancy, but in this version of Deep Trouble 2, we're on a Caribbean island somewhere, and Dr. Deep, who is the uncle of Billy and Sheena Deep, has invited them to come stay with him at his house on this Caribbean island where he has a maid and he has this assistant named Dr. Ritter, who is basically just Alexander from Deep Trouble 1, but given the name of the main villain of Deep Trouble 2. It's weird, but you'll understand if you've read the books before. And when the kids arrive on this island, they notice that there's humongous shark teeth washing up ashore. They notice that there's some weird phenomenon going on about Dr. Deep's lab, and the kids are basically told not to go down there. But when they go down there, they realize that there's a secret chemical that's being researched on by their uncle that essentially grows animals large. And we see like a giant pufferfish come out of the woodwork and blow some of their needles towards the kids in an over the top fashion. Where it's then revealed to the kids that this chemical is basically going to help starving people across the world by generating more food by enlarging animals to be able to create more, I guess, meat and stuff like that. But when the kids uncover this information, let's just say stuff goes south pretty quickly. And it turns out that they're being double crossed for this secret formula by some underlying villain in the mix. And the kids, along with their uncle, are shipped off to a vacant island where we see green screen blown up giant lizards, and we see basically just barren landscapes with this is Goosebumps budget we're talking about, so it's like a bunch of like just ramshackle like old shacks and stuff that they probably found out in the woods somewhere that they try to pass off as a Caribbean island. And after venturing on the island, they stumble across this layer of sorts where there's a bombshell revealed that there's also a mystery that was going on early on where there were certain lab assistants that were going missing and people didn't know where they're ending up. Well, it turns out that these lab assistants ended up in this layer, but they're not quite human, at least in their appearance. And we see that they're all coming after Dr. Deep because they think that this experimentation or this secret formula, and I guess their appearance now, is the result of Dr. Deep. But because there's some information about this villain out there, it's made apparent to them that they're coming after the wrong person. And we see in a very goofy, weird fashion some comeuppance for this villain. And the end note of the episode, arguably, is probably the most iconic part of it, and is probably the most memorable part of it, next to like the monster effects and the blown up giant lizard stuff. Where yeah, there involves a sideshow attraction, let's just say. So, on the surface, I would say Deep Trouble 2's two-parter had a lot of potential for me. Like, if I was on the outset, if I'd never seen this episode, and I heard that this was nothing like Deep Trouble 1 or Deep Trouble 2, or just had some similarities between both books, I would have hoped maybe they would have done just a brand new story, just maybe reusing some of the characters from those books, and that could have been like a cool concept. Like, imagine if Alexander the Assistant and Dr. Ritter were in one story together. This could have been like a Deep Trouble, like maybe 0.5 or Deep Trouble 1.5. That would have been kind of cool. But what we ended up getting was a Frankenstein mess of, I guess, the writers not knowing what the hell they were trying to do. From what I gather, Ron Oliver wanted to do an Island of Dr. Moreau story. So they went with that. They kind of forced that in and fused it into Deep Trouble 1 and 2. And the stuff they chose to keep from Deep Trouble 1 felt kind of asinine. Really, the only thing they really kept was the assistant character. But why they decided to make Dr. Ritter his assistant is beyond me. I mean, you didn't really need that part. And Dr. Ritter in the episode, I guess, is a little bit smarter than his book counterpart when you think about it. But even then, he doesn't get much time to be a villain, right? Most of the episode this is one of the atypical Goosebumps episodes where it's mostly spent on exploration and adventure. But to be honest, what really takes you out of it is the uncanny valley effect the episode has, with like the green screen effects, the monsters being like they're pretty decent effects, but the ADR is atrocious. And the fact that, I also want to say this, for the main character's sake, what they did to Billy Deep was a war crime in this episode. Absolute war crime, character defamation if I've ever seen it. The actor, no offense to him, could not act to freaking tie a shoe in this episode. He was awful. And I don't blame them. Maybe during the process of making the episode, I can totally see a scenario where they on the fly decided to make Sheena the main character just because they saw this kid and was like, oh crap, what did we get ourselves into? But for those people out there that are fans of Sheena, even hoping that she would one day get her own book, here you go. And Sheena is not a compelling character in this episode at all. I kind of feel underwhelming given it all, and they don't feel anywhere near as developed or as iconic as their book counterparts in any shape or form. Everything here just feels like a bastardization and a downgrade to the source material. And even the what could be a cool salvageable idea with the Island of Dr. Moreau stuff just comes off campy, corny. Some stuff is kind of thrown in there, like some Scooby Doo stuff, like footprints made of like sea gelatin. Where is this shit coming from? Like, and while I think the episode might try to explain it, it's just goofy stuff like that that just add up and add up and add up that just make it not enjoyable the way it should be. So yeah, Deep Trouble 2, not a fan.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I mean, listen, the iguana looks horrible. The iguana, the blown up crab, all the creatures, they just look so goofy and so ridiculous. There's plenty of memes that the community's made on that stuff. The first part, again, Billy Deep, I agree with you. It's a butchering of a character because Billy Deep is always supposed to be that Chad, that adventurous kid that, every boy kind of wants to be. It's like that boy aspiration that you want to be this great adventurer. You want to be a badass. You want to do all these things. And you just got this dork in the episode that just, is so like goofy and just falls behind Sheena when Sheena's supposed to be the annoying one as per the books. It's just weird. And the villains are not compelling. The villains don't even make much of a difference. The whole thing about the villains is like, if you look at, the first book, you look at the second book, it's not that they're necessarily like these great villains, but they have a certain role, they have a certain purpose, they have a certain thing to do. The problem with trying to do a hybrid episode and gel these things is that the villains have no purpose. That strict purpose that they had in each of the separate books, it's not here. They just feel all over the place and underutilized and just kind of shafted in certain scenes. So it doesn't really make much sense. And yeah, the actual like Island of Dr. Moreau stuff. I mean, here's my thing. This is another big thing I have a problem with this episode is that Deep Trouble, this doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that Deep Trouble is supposed to be aquatic horror. It's supposed to be ocean based, it's supposed to be marine based. The entire second half of this episode, the other part of the two-parter, is focused on a bunch of creatures that have nothing to do with the ocean or marine life. It's a damn iguana, it's a damn snake, it's a damn spider, it's a damn cock or whatever that thing was, a locust or whatever was down in that layer. Like these things have nothing to do with marine life at all. It's just like some, how I got my shrunken head type of jungle adventure kind of stuff that you would see. And then when you get to the hybrid people, yeah, one of them looks like a fish, which is because it's the thing from Shock Street. Another one is like a Power Rangers, like the Aqua Rangers, like that octopus dude. That's what he looks like. And then the other guys, one's from Horrorland, like a pig-looking dude with the crab leg. And then the other guy, I can't even tell you what he is. All right, these monsters don't fit any theme. They just look random. And that, that fact that nothing gels together, nothing works together, just makes this probably one of the most messy episodes and messy stories in the OG 90s show. So yeah, I stick to that.
Yeah, and the thing about like the Deep Trouble 2 book, and I think we tried to go over this before we got on the podcast, is like in the book, if they eat the plankton, they become like an animorph. They turn into an animal, right? An aquatic creature, right? In the episode, there's so much shit going on. You got this stuff that makes animals grow large, but then you have this stuff that turns them into hybrid human monster. Like, what? How does the science make sense here? They never elaborate on that, and maybe that could have been the saving grace for this version of Dr. Ritter. Maybe they could have played more onto that he was contaminating it to eliminate his like I guess adversaries, which could have been hinted at in the episode if I remember correctly. But they never really played him up to be an actual threat. Like they just kind of pass him off like, oh, he's just some like dwarfy little sidekick to Doctor Deep that just wanted to make some money. Blah blah blah. It felt like it like something a decom villain would do, which I can't believe I'm saying that about a Goosebumps episode. But yeah, like it felt like a decom villain. Um, and it's a shame, really. This had so much potential on the board because a Goosebumps show doing a Deep Trouble story, it could have been something to marvel with. And this ended up being the finale of the series because they decided to air the Cry of the Cat, which was designed to be the finale. They decided to air that episode before Deep Trouble. So this was the last impression that like fans during the 90s had of the show. This because this aired last. What a way to go out, man. You go out on a bad note like that. Yikes. I don't think many people probably were tuning in as much as they used to at that point. But even then, like just the sheer disappointment that comes with that is palpable with this. This is one of those situations where you had a lot of talent on the board to be able to write something good and make something good, but they just didn't do it. They just they just made something because they knew the writing was on the wall, and they're like, we're just gonna just kind of mess around and do what we want, which is fair to a degree, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I don't think it was good then. I don't think it's good now. So yeah, Deep Trouble 2 earned its spot here. If you haven't seen this episode, go watch it. You'll see what we're talking about. All right. Now moving on. We got two Are You Afraid of the Dark and then a Haunting Hour episode left to talk about. I feel like maybe we should just go ahead and knock out Are You Afraid of the Dark so we're not saving it for last, because Are You Afraid of the Dark on this podcast does get a lot of roasting. And I feel like we still got some in the tank for these two episodes because they really freaking deserve it, man. Both of these episodes, I think, are easy contenders for some of the worst kids horror episodes ever made. And this first one we're going to talk about, I've seen more increasing hate for, thankfully, because it comes from the revival era again. And this one is, I think, lesser known than Virtual Pets and Gruesome Gourmets. In some aspects, I think it's more offensive than those, which some people can put some merit to, is actually worse than those two. But the episode is The Tale of the Misfortune Cookie, which is one letter off for being Misfortune Dookie. So whoever wants to take this one over, tell us about the episode and how you feel about it.
I can take this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I can take it. So the episode basically is about this kid who is, his parents run a Chinese food shop, and he's been forced to work there for a long time, and he's an aspiring comic artist. He wants to kind of get out of this routine of his job. He feels like it's holding him back. He feels like he's not really made out to be this, and he wants to expand his career and actually go into something he's passionate about. And he also has a younger sister, and this sister is like being flirted with by this like truck delivery driver guy. And eventually he is given this box by his grandfather that has these like two samurai soldiers on the top, and his grandfather tells him that you shouldn't open the box. This is a family heirloom passed down for generations, and that it's just you can't open the box. It's something that needs to be sealed shut. And eventually he ends up breaking this rule and opening the box because his curiosity gets the better of him, and he discovers these 6 golden fortune cookies inside. And he sees this as this golden ticket chance to sell this, get a bunch of money, and then finally be able to leave this restaurant job and actually pursue his dream. And when his sister finds out about this, she gets mad at him, telling him, like, no, this is a family heirloom that's been through generations. You can't sell this. And he eventually kind of gets mad at her and drops the box. And one of the fortune cookies in the box breaks, and there's a fortune inside of it. And it kind of ends up turning him into this alternate reality situation, almost like It's a Wonderful Life scenario, where he's transported to this alternate universe where, his family, he was never born into his family. His sister kind of becomes this like punk emo chick with purple hair who's dating this delivery driver. And, his grandfather passed away, and he is this famous writer. He achieved his dream of what he wants to do, but at the cost of losing his family and losing all this important stuff in his life. And he has to kind of figure, and all the while also he's being stalked by this samurai guy who is kind of depicted on the image on the box and is hunting him down. And there's a stupid twist involving that character. And it's just kind of a, be careful what you wish for, learn to appreciate the life you had kind of storyline. Everything goes back to normal at the end. They got the usual Are You Afraid of the Dark kumbaya ending. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just a really dull episode. It's another one of those things that's just, it's boring. The acting isn't great overall. The story is convoluted and doesn't make a lot of sense. The whole twist reveal surrounding the samurai character is just very lackluster and just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I just think that the message and tone of the story it doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. And it just feels like almost like a fever dream. It almost feels like something the writers just threw together on a whim one day and didn't really put any thought or effort into it. So It's
Yeah.
definitely not a good episode. Definitely one that's another very forgettable, dark episode that definitely deserves more hate.
Yeah. When I think about Misfortune Cookie, I always think about this part about it is that when it comes to like characters in kids horror, I don't think a lot of people put enough emphasis on like how important characters can be in kids horror sometimes. But when I think about Misfortune Cookie, it's a classic example of if your characters suck, your messages, your tone, all of that, especially if it's trying to force in a moral and a hunky dory ending and all of that, it just comes across cliche and unearned. And everything about this episode, I can clearly sum up in those two words: cliche and unearned. Not only is that big problem with it, but a lot of it is just really, and I mean really, just bad stunt choreography. It's bad writing, bad just everything around it. I can get the appeal about like a kid not really appreciating where he comes from, respecting heritage, respecting wise tales from their people. If that was actually like a core theme of the story, and maybe the kid can go through a journey that actually gives some sort of believability that he connects to that stuff by the end, sure, that would be a compelling story. But here you just have this little shithead who kind of resents wanting to work at his family's restaurant. He doesn't give a shit. And how are we supposed to sympathize with this kid? You don't, because when he goes against his grandfather's warning, right, and he decides to play around the box, you should be like, oh, finally, maybe this is going to be a tale of comeuppance for this kid because he needs to learn a lesson. It is not compelling. The samurai stuff, absolute cringe. I don't know why they thought this was a good idea. And I've heard some people say this is culturally insensitive because of like the stereotypical Asian music they play as like a zinger kind of music. I'm not talking like this is like themed throughout and like it's atmospheric. No, they use this as like a zing music, as like this is supposed to be a joke. All right, that is not cool. I want to say it's like Manaha level bad with like disrespecting like Native American heritage or anything like that, but it's pretty close. I mean, this and Manaha are pretty infamous for being culturally insensitive in the show. Um, I don't know what else to say. Yeah, this is a nothing burger that probably never should have got made, but somehow it did. I think because it was low budget and they thought why not. But yeah, absolute crap. Um, yeah, Shiv, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nothing burger episode. I mean, I'm Asian, so I can say this. Asian kid works hard, whoop-de-doo. Of course, they had to go with making the Asian kid a workaholic, and everyone's a workaholic. Same thing with Old Man Cocorone, where, the African-American kids were like, yeah, we're from the streets, bro. It's just one of those things. It's like, you just have to go with the stereotype. I don't understand the warrior aspect at all because, again, it's played up to be like samurai. Samurai are Japanese people. They're not Chinese. I don't know what. Like, why couldn't they just pick like a Chinese dragon or something more, akin to the culture? Maybe some spirit or something that's in Chinese folklore because they have a lot of folklore to choose from. No, they couldn't do it. They just picked these two random, which I think is supposed to be like a yin and yang kind of warrior thing. Because one's white, one's black, and you got the yin and yang symbol. But it's really cringe in terms of like the fight choreography and the ninja, like this warrior is like gatekeeping the kid from getting into the new life. Like what? And then you got like a Dark Danny from Ghost Next Door twist as to who the warrior is supposed to be and all these things. And there's a beyond, and I mean like beyond cringe anticlimactic scene where this kid is rich. So he's got this limo driver who's like telling him to get back into the limousine. And he gets up and confronts the warrior. And he's like, you know what, bro? I like my family. And I'm not going to be rich. It's not worth it. And the warrior goes, uh. And that's where it ends. And I'm like, guys, you fucking suck. What is that? Like, what is that? There wasn't even a fight scene. Like, you have this stunt choreographer doing flips and doing all these things, and then that's how he gets taken out. It's just so weird. And also, there's something really strange about just that girl becoming this emo '80s, rocker biker chick, and then that guy who's clearly like a couple years older than her is like hitting on her and saying like "sweetheart." Just really weird. So yeah, this thing should have not been made. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how this one has slipped through the cracks as long as it has with Are You Afraid of the Dark, because I've seen many people like rank the full series at this point, and a couple of ranking videos. Some people I think have put this in the bottom 10, but surprisingly, I see this one like in the bottom 25. It's never like down that low, and I see people like putting stuff like I don't know like renegade virus and stuff like that, like phone police even below this one. I'm like, really? Y'all, like, can I ask the Are You Afraid of the Dark community out there that might be listening, right? Do you really believe that phone police is worse than Misfortune Cookie? If so, let us know down in the comment section why. Because I just cannot buy that whatsoever. I really can't. Because this is one that I think was a non-starter from the jump. Like you can clearly tell some of that is the case with Are You Afraid of the Dark specifically. Sometimes, like you get into it, and like, oh, here we go, non-starter. This is going to be bad. Um, this is one of those evident things where the first time you watch it, you're probably gonna be like, "Yep, I should have listened to to Goosejunkies and not watched this." But we urge you to watch it, have your own opinion, but still, like, it's not worse than Phone Police. Stop the cap, okay? That's all I have to say on it. So yeah, great inclusion for this list. I definitely think it deserves more hate, along with this other Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. Now this one, unlike the some other ones we've talked about, we're kind of going back to where Manaha came from, and that is like season 1 through 5 era of the show. This one somehow slips through the cracks too. Like people, I guess, forget this episode even exists. I have seen a few people mention this as one of the worst Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes as of recent, which is a good thing, because I 100% agree it is one of the worst. Not only is it one of the cringiest things I think I've ever seen put to television in terms of acting performances, but it has some of the most forced character work I have ever seen. Some of the worst chemistry between actors I've seen on Are You Afraid of the Dark, and it's pretty much known for having crap chemistry. And it's just baffling how they thought that this was a good idea. And it's also a decom feeling one, so that adds extra salt to the wound. It's the tale of prisoners past. Holy moly. This episode sucks. I'm sorry, Are You Afraid of the Dark fans, that we keep having to crap on this show, but holy crap, this thing sucks. It has the kid from Step by Step in it, and he was also in the Beethoven movie, which should be cool, right? He was like Mark. Well, I think his name was Mark. I liked him in Beethoven. I just don't like him here. Um, this story follows the quintessential nerdy kid, right? And he has something to prove with his bully. But however, the twist of this story is the bully is his new stepbrother, or going to be his stepbrother. I forget the exact details, but something along the lines of that. And while they're out at a school function one day, they're learning about some history about where they're visiting, which I think is a prison. And they end up stumbling across this prison cell that may or may not unleash this spirit of this prisoner that was said to do something heinous there. And let's just say the ghost decides to follow him home, and some hijinks ensues with some really shitty acting, and just I cannot make this up. But if you've seen this clip, you know exactly where I'm coming from. Somebody posted a clip on YouTube of the funniest Are You Afraid of the Dark scene of all time, and it's this scene, and it always lives rent free in my head. It's this kid having this blowout with his bully, I guess, stepbrother, and the guy is a terrible actor, and they're just fighting beside this bedroom door, and the ghost comes in and sucks him through the door, and the nerdy kid goes down and sees that his freaking basketball shoes are just laying on the floor, and he picks it up, looks in the shoe, and is like mystified that he just disappeared. That is one of the cringiest things I have ever seen in Are You Afraid of the Dark, by far. It is funny because I don't think it's intentionally funny, but it's like so unaware about how cringy it is that it's funny. And then of course the nerdy kid has to find a way to save um, his bully brother, I guess, and prove to him that he's not so wimpy after all, and kumbaya, right? That's basically the story. Yeah, this is just baffling. Okay, cringe on top of cringe on top of cringe, bad acting galore, corny sibling relationships that are overblown stereotypes of nerds and bullies. The bully guy cannot act to save his life. The scares of the episode is just really cheap for its time. CGI ghost effects, which, to be honest, are not the best from Are You Afraid of the Dark whatsoever. And the nerdy kid, when he's given scary material, like I said, he's looking at an empty shoe. This is not scary. Who thought that this would be a spooky tale, right? I think they were going for a more hunky dory, like good wholehearted family message one here, and like learning to kind of respect each other for your differences and whatnot. But that's not worthwhile when the horror and the performances and the whole premise is cooked from the get go, right? This is a classic example of maybe a good message and a good theme on paper, just wrong story. They could have applied this to any other story, but they chose this nothing burger, and here we are. It's very bad.
Yeah, no, this episode was not one I've seen before, so I watched it and I was like, dude, this is like one of the most cringy episodes. I mean, there's like no saving grace to this episode at all. I mean, the kids, first of all, they don't get along the whole episode, right? And it's one of the, I mean, hands down, one of the stupidest character pairings known to kids horror kind. I mean, the most popular athlete in school, like his guardian figure, marries into the most nerdy loser dork in school. Like the two complete polar opposites of school popularity have to be together. And they keep fighting with each other the whole episode. They literally do not get along until the most forced line at the very end of the episode where the bully character is like, hey, you're not so much of a dork after all. And I was like, dude, stick that shotgun barrel through my mouth. I'm not sitting through this any longer, bro. Like, it is straight up nasty work. Also, the fact this episode is so cringe. And they just go to Alcatraz. Like, what the hell? Can we go over that, people? Why the hell are they in Alcatraz with a bank robber that has to be like, it is the most tone-deaf episode that probably comes from Are You Afraid of the Dark? Because you got the two most goofy, dorky PBS kids-ass characters from a DCOM or bad sitcom, and then you've got just Alcatraz with the actual thief, an actual criminal, and his ghost. And when the ghost comes back to their house, it is so lame. I mean, first of all, the parents suck too. This is not just a thing where the kids are bad, the parents suck. Like when they're interacting with their parents, it's literally so cringe because it's the most like stereotypical, you gotta believe me. Like they right away just tell the two kids, hey, you two are shitheads. We are not listening to you. They try to convince them that ghosts are real. It is so bad, man. And I can't even remember jack shit about the climax. I'm gonna be honest, that's how forgettable the episode is. I think they find out like the secret of the prisoner and put him back in. I don't remember, like buried treasure, some shit. Fuck this episode. That's all I gotta say, man. The only thing that you'll be remembered is the dialogue, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode was rough. This might be like the worst Are You Afraid of the Dark episode I have seen aside from Hungry Hounds.
Yeah.
Like, that's saying something because Hungry Hounds was utter dog shit.
No pun.
But this like is pretty much tied with it in my opinion. The acting is abysmally terrible. Even if it is like funny bad at some points, it is still just horrible. Even the parents are terrible actors in this episode. Like usually, at least in some of these episodes, if you have bad kid performances, you can salvage it with better adult performances. But no, the parents are just as terrible. The plot makes no sense and is dull. Again, the scares are non-existent in this. And like even like this like subplot of like the daughter of this prisoner that they go to interview, and like there's barely any closure with it because they literally go to ask her and then she just makes them leave right away. And then you suddenly get this happy ending with her at the end. And it's like, where did this come from? How does this make any sense between each other? And like the scene that made me laugh though, there is a scene that cracked me up, was when they first encounter the prisoner's ghost and are running away. And this, the bully jock dude has the goofiest run I have ever seen. He is standing there, goofy face, arms straight at his side, and like just like I don't know what he is doing with his run, but it's just the stupidest looking run I have ever seen someone make, especially when this kid is supposed to be a jock. And he is running even nerdier than the nerd kid is running. That made me laugh way too hard. But everything else about that's like the only part I remember about this episode because of how funny it was. But the rest of this episode is just so bad.
I completely forgot about that. And the moment you mentioned it, I got like a flashback to that scene because I did remember that scene. Oh my god, dude! Yeah, this episode is hopeless. It's a hopeless episode. And again, the fact that they're just in Alcatraz, like, why put the most goofy characters in the most like serious, like unprofessional setting, man? Oh my god, it is what it is.
It's also one of those things where like it feels so cliche and forced because you don't feel anything for these characters at all because you're just too busy being like, I hate these kids already just because they're living embodiment of caricatures. I can't stand it. Another prime example of that. And that's 2 back-to-back episodes where I said that, but genuinely, that's where I think this episode falls flat on its face. If the characters were more developed and they had more of like less one-note personalities and maybe there was more stakes involved, this could have been possibly salvageable. Maybe not like the best thing ever. I don't think it would have achieved like a good or anything, but it wouldn't have been like so terrible. At least would have had a solid message. But these characters just are freaking terrible all across the board. Performances, how they're written, it just is genuinely mystifying how some of these episodes got greenlit and Are You Afraid of the Dark. I really don't understand how some of these words. Yeah, this looks good on paper. I think the editor was probably unconscious, huffing on oxygen in a hospital bed and saying, raising his finger or pointing to the monitor anytime they asked him a question. Is this a good idea? No words, nothing, just points. Okay, we're gonna go with that. That's what it feels like. Or maybe they had a magic 8 ball that said, "Should we make this an episode?" Yes. Okay, we're gonna make it. It's a game of chance. I feel like Afraid of the Dark back then. Whether we're gonna get crap
Whoever
like
wrote this episode definitely got arrested, and he was probably in a prison cell just on the cell phone just talking to him.
it's yeah. Um, but everybody out there saying like like gruesome gourmets, virtual pets, hungry hounds, um, clear worst, Manaha. You can probably throw that in there. No, we need to talk about Prisoners Past more, y'all. Bring up Prisoners Past and Misfortune Cookie. These two need to be studied by mankind. Okay, it needs to be studied by kids horror researchers on how not to make an episode. Both of these suck. All right, bona fide suck. There's 4 Are You Afraid of the Dark L's already in this video, um, but all 4 of these suck that we talked about. Which brings us to the shocking last one we're going to talk about right here, which is the one of the occasional haunting hour L's that they dished out back in the day. Now this one, I think before we got on camera, I think we all were talking about this, and I think a lot of us really seem to think that this is easily the worst Haunting Hour episode, and how it's not talked about more than Poof Day Fromage or Spaceman's Original Cut or some other episodes like what is it, Best Friend Forever or stuff like that. How this is not brought up often enough is mystifying to me. This is when did the season of this come out? Season 2 or season 3? It had to be later because I know for a fact. Yeah, it had to be season 3. And it was written by one of the main show writers of the show, which had some pretty decent episodes like Alien Candy, and I think they did Lights Out and stuff like that. But this, holy moly, why this got made over the remaining Haunting Hour stories from the short story collection, how this got made over some Neil Shusterman Darkness Creeping stories, how this got made over basically any idea that some kid, 4-year-old kid for that matter, in preschool thought about in their nightmares and decided to doodle on a piece of paper. How this got made over any of that is just, it's aggravating. And this episode is My Robot, aka the worst Haunting Hour episode, if not possibly in the running for worst kids horror episode of all time. I often think about this topic, and My Robot has, for the past few years, come up quite consistently. It's always in the first 3 that come to mind. I hate this thing with a burning passion, and I think everybody else out there that hasn't seen this episode should watch it and then hate it as well, because it is freaking dog shit. Shiv, do you want to take this one over and tell us about My Robot and then start off with your thoughts about it?
Yeah, My Robot
Okay.
is an episode basically opening up with quite possibly the most stereotypically dressed up Steve Urkel nerdiest kid known to humankind. I mean, an absolute little dork. I mean, the way he's dressed up and the way he acts. Basically, there's a science experiment going on dealing with static electricity. And he's essentially trying to be the teacher's pet. He's answering some questions, and he's an outcast because, he's a nerd. He's not going to have any friends. But there are some bully characters, which are quite possibly the most unintimidating bullies ever. And shout out to King Newsme. One of them has like a Ludwig haircut. They just look goofy. They just act ridiculous. And while he's getting bullied, quote unquote, just kids saying minor things. There is a point when he gets outside the classroom and he's about to get confronted by the bullies when a kid ends up standing up to him in the most unintimidating way possible. He basically goes up to him and goes, "Hey, I don't think you should pick on him." And they're basically like, "Shut the hell up." And he's like, "No, no, I don't think so." And then he keeps speaking up on the kid's behalf. And eventually they leave the guy alone. And when he talks to this main character, the nerdy kid, he then ends up finding out that this kid, for some reason, thinks that he actually has a robot, a functioning robot that basically is like his best friend that he keeps on the down low. And even though he thinks the kid is weird and he's kind of telling him, like, stop telling people you have a robot because that's why you're going to get a plushie in the bathroom. Like, you can keep getting wedgies the more you keep talking about this. He's like, no, but there really is a robot. And eventually, when they split ways and the kid gets home, he ends up getting like an email or a message in a chat room from something which identifies as that guy's robot. And right away, he's like, seriously? Like, I stood up for this kid against those bullies, and now he's like making fun of me. And then he ends up basically meeting the kid again the next day in school. And the kid is super dead serious about this robot thing. And basically then starts switching his beat and telling him, like, yeah, I was making fun of it, like I was making a joke. But eventually he does end up having that kid get intrigued enough that the kid follows him home. And when the kid ends up following this main character home, he ends up looking into his downstairs basement. And through the window, he ends up seeing that there is all these different gadgets with the most abhorrent soundboard spamming of just computer gadget noise like every like 10 seconds straight. And then when he turns around, he sees a robot, which looks like a dude with a welding mask. I mean, this is not no robot. This dude looks like he's just like an engineer wearing a welding mask. And it jump scares him, and he hops back, and then he looks back again, and the robot teleported, and now it's behind him. And he eventually ends up getting taken to the basement and finds out that this kid is basically getting taken care of by this robot. And his parents were scared away. Okay. And he's being taken care of by the robot, basically making him eat all this healthy food, making sure he comes home straight. And they have to find out a way to get this kid free from the robot and try to find a scheme on how to take it down. Um, I'm going to say this with full transparency. And this is going to be the hardest thing to ever come out of my mouth because Haunting Hour is like one of my favorite shows, and I grew up with it when it was coming out weekly. This is the worst kids' horror episode of all time. In my opinion, there's nothing worse than My Robot from Haunting Hour. And I just saw this like right before the podcast. This episode has zero redeeming factors, zero funny factors. It's not, oh, this is so bad I can laugh at it. No. If you laugh at it, go to a therapist and get immediate help because you need it. All right. This episode, the characters all suck. They're all doggy doo doo. There's nothing to get invested about. The main character is the most stereotypical, goofy, lame wad that you would never want to get invested into. His friend is fucking lame. His friend has no personality. All he does is just like, do you actually have a robot? And he's like, yeah. He's like, yo, you won't believe me though. And he's like, no, I'll believe you. And when they end up meeting this robot, the robot has got to be one of the worst designs ever done for a kid's horror villain. It looks like a guy in a welding costume with the dude, a bender from Futurama type of arms and stuff. It just looks goofy, man. And the way that it moves is so jank because the robot is sagging. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, people? The robot's V-line, dick line, is just showing the whole episode. It's very clear that it's a costume because it's separating at the seam. Like, oh my god, y'all, at least tape it together or like staple it together so we can try to act like this thing is real. And the whole episode All it does is just like look at them through like a goofy, like solid snake type of like radar screen and like tracks like how much calcium and nutrition the kid's supposed to have. The bullies are trash. I mean, this is what they do. All right, let me explain this to you guys. They go back to the school, right? And they're trying to basically, the way that he lures the robot to school is that he is not allowed to be even a minute late back to his house, right? So he's a minute late to his house, and immediately the robot goes into Terminator mode and goes all the way to school. And it's literally going down the hallways, and the janitor hears these loud ass noises, and he's just like, all right, whatever. It goes back to cleaning. And the bullies are there trying to make it look like they're intimidating the main character and hurting him. And the way they do it is by grabbing his shoulders and going, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. And I'm like, kill me, strangle me, asphyxiate me, light me on fire, whatever's the most painful death. Why am I sitting here watching this? And when they get there, the robot doesn't do anything. The robot doesn't do anything. I mean, this is fucking Power Rangers Ninja Steel level acting with these bullies. They go up to this robot, and then you hear like a taser sound off screen, and they run like bitches away. And that's the big threat about this villain. And then the whole conclusion happens. Also, yo, you want to talk about the worst parents? Have you ever seen the worst parents that were never even shown on camera? This is the explanation behind what happened to his parents. First of all, they make it sound like the way the main character makes it sound like is as if this robot killed his parents. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, okay, that's kind of dark. Like, all right, this thing killed his parents. Let's respect that. No, he says the robot scared away his parents. So they like went to a different place to live. They just left their kid behind. They didn't call the police. They didn't call law enforcement. They didn't try to get any help. They just left their child behind. Yo, never leave a child behind. No, no, they left their child behind. It's just like such a mind-numbingly dumb episode. And the way the twist ending does, yeah, fuck this kid. If you had any semblance of caring about these kids, when it gets to the ending, you're like, wow, screw this kid. I'm glad his parents left him, and I'll leave it at that. That's all I got for this absolutely garbage episode.
Yeah, I think My Robot is just one of the most devoid of logic stories I think ever produced in kids horror when you think about it, because I think Haunting Hour has this problem maybe in the later season stories. Like, I think Not Near Men has a similar problem of like all this phenomenon is happening, but parents don't think to make a police report, or the police, like in the case of Not Near Mint, I think a character was like killed, but there's no police investigation when they find the body. Like, there's no police discovery. No, they just find the body. Police aren't called. Nothing. Nobody noticed it but them. It's all plot convenience bullshit just to make the story work. And when you look at the story of My Robot, maybe the one thing salvageable is a kid wanting to be a creator, creating something that backfires. A classic Tales from the Dark Side episode that did this idea was Hush, written by Zena Henderson, that got adapted in the show. That episode had a kid that was an inventor. He created a vacuum that had a life of its own that was attracted to noise, basically like what is that? What is that movie that John Krasinski made?
Quiet Place.
A Quiet Place. That's basically A Quiet Place before A Quiet Place happened. Um, and his mom comes home and the thing murders his mom. Like the kid, like it was straight up like that with it. Here, it could have been that. It could have been like Haunting Hour's version of Hush, but it's not that. It's a super, and I mean super, freaking cringy, corny idea with like a very cheap looking, like almost uncanny valley 50s throwback robot that has like stereotypical sound effects that looks like you can literally shoot a bazooka at it and blow it up and be done with the episode. But for some reason, these kids, they got this kid forcibly doing jumping jacks in a room. Like, what's going on, my guy? Like, the things that are supposed to be scary, I guess, is existential, because maybe you can look at it from this way: the kid has no real autonomy with his life. He's being controlled by the robot. Existentially, that's kind of scary. But you have to have scenes to make that register better than having him doing jumping jacks, right? or having him being in a science lab and worried that he has his heat seeker on. Like this is so freaking lame, my guy. And like Shiv brought up, there's a whole scene where like the bullies come into the fold and the robot does freaking nothing. It literally just stands there. Like, how are we supposed to take this thing seriously if you're depicting all these characters just to be afraid of this giant aluminum can, basically, that does not look intimidating whatsoever? Bad idea, bad writing, characters suck, forced moral in the story. It feels unearned. It feels cliche. Running gag with these episodes because of how just terrible everything is. And yeah, there's nothing really redeeming here. Unlike Prisoners Past, Laser Maze, Manaha, you can laugh at that shit because of how bad it is. The Howler, to a degree, you can see the potential with the book kind of in the veins of it. Maybe to a certain degree with like Deep Trouble 2, you can see the appeal of wanting to do Island of Dr. Moreau, and that could be kind of cool for a Deep Trouble story. Here, nothing about the story is cool or unintentionally funny. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm sure Micah probably echoes the sentiment. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree. This is by far the worst Haunting Hour episode by a landslide. I still think that there are some dark episodes that are worse than it overall in the kids' horror spectrum. I still think Hungry Hounds is the worst kids' horror episode I've ever seen. But I think this one definitely is a contender for top 10, at least top 10, if not even top 5 worst kids' horror episodes. I think that the robot design looks like a three-way love child between a welder's mask, the Michelin Man, and Bender from Futurama. Like, it looks so bad. Like, it's literally like the arms and legs look like they're just used like insulation tubes that you see in like house walls and stuff like that. And then again, like the welder's mask. And like there's even some shots where you can see the Superformer's face through the welder mask if you look closely enough. It's just so poorly done. With the show that has so many awesome practical monster effects, did they just not have the budget for this episode? Or I don't understand who approved this robot design and how this got into the show with such high quality like monster designs. And it's like, as you guys said, the story is convoluted. It makes no sense. The main character is insufferable, and every character is insufferable in this. The twist, like, you can understand. Again, I always like the Haunting Hour does darker twists, and this does still have a dark twist, but it's executed so poorly, and in such just like a cringy way that it just doesn't. It's not effective in the slightest bit. It's a very slow-paced episode. Not much happens. Again, the robot's just not intimidating in the slightest bit. It just feels so. Again, it feels like an episode that was just tacked on for the sake of having another episode within the season, and there was no thought, love, or effort put into it whatsoever. It's like, and this thing that sucks is like it has the potential to be a cool idea if they went a completely different story route. It's just that the story they went with just so lackluster and just such a wasted idea of this idea of a bullied kid being protected by a robot. Like that could have been something interesting, and then the robot backfiring. But they just executed it so horribly and so lazily that it's easily this biggest disgrace to the Haunting Hour, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, its biggest weakness too is just the fact that you just can't take anything serious. Like when something is so blatantly like you cannot take any of this seriously, then you are not going to get invested or interested in the story. Because I can promise you, any scene with this robot, when the kid is like at school and he's like, when the kid tries to tell him like, hey, how come you don't like abandon this robot or like tell it no or do something, he's just like, no, I can't do that. This robot is bad news. And then you see the bad news, and it's because it's got like a taser that it tases two little prepubescent boys who run away in fear. Like you tell me the police can't do anything about this thing. You're telling me that you can't just get your uncle with a crowbar or a chainsaw and just take out this thing? Come on, man. And also, didn't he buy this thing off Craigslist? He like the way he described it was like he bought this robot off of like eBay or Craigslist, and it had like a default program. Like I thought this kid invented it. But then when I watched the episode, the way they make it sound is that he ordered the robot. I'm like, he ordered the robot? Like he didn't build this thing? Like that he said like the default mode to it when he ordered it was this, and then it had an AI chip that made. I was like, yeah, this thing is cooked, bro. Like this genius kid with all these noises in his garage didn't even make the robot. Like get the fuck out of here, dude. That shit is trash.
Yeah, and like when people bring up Haunting Hour, like they're always bringing up Poof Day Fromage, Spaceman's like original cut. They're bringing up like what is it, Mrs. Worthington, Not Near Mint. A lot of people hate on Seance. For some reason, there's a lot of hate for that school play episode. I keep forgetting the name of it.
Stage fright.
Yeah, Stage Fright. I don't get that. Bad Eggs, another one. Why are people talking about My Robot? Are you serious? Are you for real? Do like do people actually think this episode is like existentially scary? Like I don't get it. Maybe people forgive it for the dark ending, but even then, like everybody said, like the dark ending doesn't matter much when it's poorly executed. I mean, it's like it's a nothing story. Like Michael said, there's some salvageability to this idea. Let's say you get a mail order monster sent to your house. Like let's say they went the whole mail order idea. Like we've read Mail Order Massacre Shiv. Imagine this kid orders a robot from a comic book. He's a comic book nerd, and the robot comes to life, does something with his parents, maybe abducts him, kills him off screen. Something dark like that. Takes over his life, right? Rips up his comic books, stuff like that. Put some actual stakes in there, make the design cool, you have a good story. That's not this. It's not that. It's just not. It's the total opposite thing. And for some reason, I think I've seen people defend this episode online as saying, "Oh, no, it's pretty frightening, if it's making you do all these things against your will, like that's scary." I'm like, "Yeah, existentially, but you can't take this stuff seriously on screen. Like I don't see how you can take it seriously." And that's the disconnect I think I have historically with this episode. So I just can't buy into it at all. Like, it's just not it at all. I cannot forgive it, even though I do think there is some salvageability there. It's just it's not going to get that for me.
You
Ever
also got to
again.
factor in that it's a blatant ripoff of Best Friend Forever, which is their own episode. Like, if you look at Best Friend Forever and you compare it to My Robot, they literally got so many similarities. And yet, of course, that episode's more memorable for better reasons. So I don't know why they thought that this was a good idea. But actually, funny enough, there is a mail order Robot Kids horror movie I saw on Tubi one time. Gonna have to find that and dig that up because it looked just as bad as this. So that's for a future episode.
Oh yeah, I think it is called Mail Order Monster. I think I've seen
Mail
that.
order monster, yeah.
Yeah. Oh god. But yeah. My Robot, I think for sure, without a doubt, for me is the worst Haunting Hour episode. I don't think anything comes close. The only other two episodes that I think are well known outside of this that I think come close to how bad I think it is for me personally. And I don't mean to ruffle feathers. Tale of the Hungry Hounds and My Harry's Adventure. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, My Harry's Adventure, I can kind of see the so bad is good appeal, so maybe not that one, but definitely Hungry Hounds and My Robot are up there. I go back and forth with them. There's just nothing redeemable there with either one of them. And the things that could be salvageable or the things that you could identify with that are some good ideas are just absolutely squandered by just nonsense and a lack of believability. So, yeah. Tale as old as time when it comes to bad kids horror. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that was our list, top five, and we also had our honorable mentions. I guess for the discussion to kind of finish off this podcast, to kind of pass it around real quick. Out of all the stories we talked about tonight, all 8 that we covered, which one, in your opinion, is the one that had the most potential in your eyes? And I'll just pass it around. Whoever wants to go first.
Mikey, you want to go first? Or you want me to take it?
I can go. I mean, as I mentioned, I honestly think My Robot probably had the most potential to be something interesting because, again, as we've described, there's so many different story possibilities we could have gone to make it darker, make it actually scary, add tension and some stakes, update the robot design to actually make it look good. And just do think there's so many ways you can make a mail order robot story work and be intimidating and scary. And that, again, it's just if they had been written better, had a different concept behind it, it would have been honestly a pretty solid episode, I think. Maybe not the best, maybe not the scariest, but still a watchable, good episode that people would remember versus what we have with the actual episode. So I feel like overall, My Robot would be my choice.
Okay. Well, my pick is going to shock a lot of people. All right, no one's going to expect this because I'm actually going to say My Robot as well. My Robot is my pick because of two stories that popped in my head when we watched My Robot, which is Almost Human by Robert Bloch, which is an adult horror short story that was supposed to be in Tales from the Dark Side 2, the movie, and also a Goosebumps book from Slappy World, which a lot of people love, called It's Alive, It's Alive. So those two come in my head in terms of robot horror. I feel like because of the fact that It's Alive, It's Alive, the Goosebumps book, and Almost Human by Robert Bloch, which is funny that it's like one super old story, one modern story. They both have goofy robot designs in both of them, and yet the stories are so sinister because it's about a robot that's learning human behavior and might have some weird things going on. I mean, Almost Human is the idea that bad influence can lead the robot to become a bad entity and get jealous and all these things and cause problems. It's Alive is almost like what if something's wrong in the hard drive and it starts malfunctioning. So you could have had both of those routes chosen in this, basically episode where maybe the robot's malfunctioning, it starts getting creepy. I think about the scene of It's Alive, where the girl opens up the door and she sees the robot down the dark hallway just sitting there looking at her like a Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic. And that's some creepy shit. You could have that. Almost Human, where anytime that they're down there with the robot's like staring them down, and it's almost like they're so like nervous about this thing because it's unhinged because a criminal taught it. You could have had the bullies or a previous owner of the robot, do some bad things, and it gets inherited by the kid, and he's slowly starting to figure out that this robot maybe was taught some wrong things by the wrong people. That could be a thing. So yeah, I would say this one has the most potential.
I can respect that because, like I said, like it could have gone like that Hush from Tales from the Dark Side. I'm glad that you brought up Almost Human and It's Alive, It's Alive. I think you're on the money that My Robot probably had the strongest potential to be something because of how, if you're looking at the small scale nature of Haunting Hour sometimes, like that would have fit perfectly in a small scale natured story that it was going for. It just did not do any of that. For me, I actually am going back to my honorable mention and I'm saying Tale of the Laser Maze. Now, here's why. Name one kids' horror story that sticks out to you that is sports or like action sports themed that could potentially be like a Hunger Games for kids' horror. Not a lot, right? And I think what could have salvaged Laser Maze to a degree is like, have you ever seen like Cobra Kai or Karate Kid where they have like a world's martial arts tournament? Imagine it like this Austin Powers guy, maybe not dressed like that, but you know what I mean? He goes around scouting kids from school to school, maybe, area to area, and he puts them in this huge tournament of laser tag. But you throw in that element, like I said, of like death race or something like that. What comes to mind is like this original Xbox game called Death Row, which is like this weird like sports game. It's kind of like rugby, kind of like soccer, but the whole goal is like if you win and like there's like death traps that can kill you and stuff like that. You know, that would have been fun to see just like a sports action themed episode because you just normally don't get that in kids horror, and it could have been some huge spectacle kind of thing where characters kind of had to learn to come together. Maybe the siblings could have come together, put aside their rivalry, and learned that working together and treating each other as equals is good. You could still have that message, but also have it be like large scale and fun with it. Um, I think that could have been a really fun idea. The sad thing is that it's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Maybe if it was any other franchise, I'd have more faith. Like if Haunting Hour were to try it, I would have been all on board with that. I think they could have pulled it off really fun. Maybe even Goosebumps to an extent. But like I said, a lot of these shows, man, and I think this goes across the board. Till I think a common reoccurrence between all five in our top five and even our honorable mentions is that the budget and time constraints were a death nail for these older shows back in the day, even for Haunting Hours time. Um, I feel like if they if these shows were made in modern times with bigger budgets, they can do a bigger scale idea with like a laser maze or laser tag idea, where it's like do or die, Hunger Games style, maybe Squid Game style. Um, but yeah, but the fact that it's in the '90s, Are You Afraid of the Dark? I mean, I don't think it would have been the best thing ever, but I still think it would have been potential to be like a fan favorite, fun one. Um, it kind of reminds me of Pinball Wizard when it comes to that. So, um, yeah, that's just my pick. But yeah, my other pick would be My Robot as well. Um, so yeah. Um, Anything else to add before we head off, guys?
I got nothing.
Nothing. All right. So that concludes episode 45 for Goose Junkies, y'all. As of now, we don't have anything announced for episode 46, so we're going to kind of put a pin in it and we're going to surprise you all next episode with what we're going to do. So stay tuned for that. If you're not subscribed to my channel and you're not, having the notification bell rung, please do so in case you like our podcast. We have a playlist of all of our podcast episodes down here in a playlist on this channel for you to check out at your own leisure. A wide variety of different topics. I think we might try to go back to doing some face-offs and get back into the old scheme of things sooner than later. So keep out for that. If you're not subscribed to Ultimate Goosebumps Man or the Horrorlander, please do so. They're great channels. They're great folks, and they deserve a lot of love and attention from you guys as well. I'm going to have the links to their channels in the description and the comment section of this video, and they're also going to be co-authors. So you're going to see their names in the author handle of this video. You can find them there and also subscribe and follow them through that as well. Until next time, we hope you all stay spooky, but let us know down in the comment section, out of all the ones we talked about today, what's the worst one that we brought up in this video? And is there one that we missed? Is there that mythical unicorn that not even Goose Junkies knows about that might be out there lurking that you think is far worse? Please let us know. And if you have any recommendations for face-offs you want to see in the future or other topics similar to this that you want to see us do, please also share that. Until next time, Goose Junkie signing out. Hope you take care.
Deuces.